In the quiet hills of 19th century Ireland, something unseen began to take root. It started slowly, a sickness, and not in people, but in the soil. The leaves yellowed, the crops turned black, and soon a land that had fed millions began to starve. This was not just a famine, it was a rupture, quiet catastrophe that would change the shape of Ireland forever. Between 1845 and 1852, over 1 million people died. Another 2 million fled across oceans, all because of one humble crop, the potato. In this story, we will drift through that time, through famine and fear, through survival and sorrow. We'll ask, how did anyone make it through? This is the story of the Irish potato famine and of the people who endured it. Let us begin. It was the summer of 1845. The fields were full. The air was still. Ireland's potato crop, the lifeline of the people, was nearly ready to harvest. But something was different. A strange darkness clung to the leaves, black spots, then rot, a smell sour and unfamiliar. When farmers pulled the potatoes from the ground, found them soft, collapsed, diseased. A blight, invisible, merciless, had crept into the soil, and it was just the beginning. Within weeks, the failure had spread, from the east of the island to the west. Field after field, village after village. The potatoes were no good. And for many, there was nothing else. The British newspapers called it potato sickness. But to those living through it, it was something else entirely. A quiet hunger was starting to rise, one that would soon become a storm. With the harvest ruined, the hunger set in. At first, people waited for the next harvest, waited for help that never seemed to come. Many tried to survive on foraged weeds, nettles, or seaweed from the shore. Others boiled grass, or ate the bark from trees. Some walked for miles, in the rain and the cold, hoping to find food, or work, or kindness. Entire families were evicted from their homes. Unable to pay rent on land that could no longer feed them, the roads filled with the weak, the starving, the silent. In some towns, charity kitchens opened, serving thin soup 2 lines of the desperate. But there was never enough. For many, survival became a quiet battle, not just for food, but for dignity, for hope, for the belief that this darkness would end. It was not just a famine of the body, but a famine of the soul. When there was no food and no hope, many chose to leave. But leaving came with a cost. Families sold everything, a pig, a kettle, a single blanket, to buy passage on a ship bound for the unknown. They were called coffin ships. Dark, overcrowded, with little food, no medicine, and sickness that spread faster than the wind. Some never made it. They died at sea, wrapped in cloth, buried in the deep. But those who survived landed in places they had only heard of in stories. Boston, New York, Canada, Liverpool. They arrived with empty pockets and hearts full of loss. They would become servants, laborers, bricklayers, dockhands, anything to survive. But they carried something else too. Their language. Their stories, their songs. Pieces of Ireland that could not be taken by famine or washed away by the sea. For many Irish families, the journey across the Atlantic was a gamble between life and death. The so-called coffin ships carried thousands across treacherous waters. Conditions on board were bleak, overcrowded, disease-ridden, and suffocating. Entire families huddled together, clinging to hope as waves crashed against the hull. Some never made it. Typhus and dysentery claimed countless lives before land was ever in sight. Those who survived found themselves in strange new lands. Liverpool became one of the first havens, though the welcome was cold. Overcrowded slums grew around the docks, and signs in windows read "No Irish need apply." Poverty followed them like a shadow. Across the ocean, in New York and Boston, Irish immigrants filled the streets hungry for work, often settling for the most dangerous jobs. They built railroads, dug canals, and worked in factories where accidents were common and wages low. Yet even in hardship, they built communities. Churches and taverns became places of solace. In Canada, the story was much the same. The port city of Quebec became a landing point for thousands, many arriving sick and weakened from the voyage. Quarantine stations were overwhelmed. But from these trials, Irish enclaves slowly grew places where old songs were sung, and Gaelic whispers still echoed in cramped tenements. Through resilience and grit, these famine survivors planted new roots in foreign soil. Their journey was not just one of survival, but of transformation, shaping the cities they entered and leaving an enduring legacy across continents. But even as Irish communities began to take hold abroad, those left behind in Ireland faced a very different reality. For them, famine gave way to something even more harrowing, a quiet struggle to rebuild in a land forever changed. Back in Ireland, the landscape was forever scarred. Fields once alive with potatoes now lay barren. Entire villages stood empty, their thatched roofs caved in, doorways open to the wind. Families who stayed faced a fragile existence. Many turned to tenant farming, scraping by on whatever land they could hold. The social fabric of the country had unraveled. The old clan systems were gone, replaced by absentee landlords and emigration letters from across the sea. For some, survival meant relying on charity and soup kitchens. Others clung to small patches of land, growing whatever crops they could manage. Yet even in despair, resilience flickered. Folk traditions carried on quiet evenings filled with music, storytelling, and whispered prayers for loved ones who had journeyed far away. Slowly, Ireland began to heal. New crops like turnips and cabbage replaced the blighted potatoes. Communities rebuilt, though, smaller, tighter-knit than before. And across the ocean, Irish immigrants sent back letters and money, helping their families survive. This bond between the Irish at home and abroad created a lifeline that would endure for generations. By the end of the famine years, over 1 million people were dead. Another 1 million had left, scattering Irish culture across the world. But from this unimaginable suffering grew a strength and determination that shaped not just Ireland, but the countries where the Irish settled. The famine changed everything. It was a time of loss, of sorrow, but also of survival. And though the scars remain, so too does the memory of a people who refused to be broken. Even in the wake of famine, when the land was scarred and the people scattered, the Irish spirit endured. It was found not in wealth or power, but in the small, unbreakable threads of their culture. Music became a lifeline. In humble cottages, fiddles, flutes, and filled the air with haunting melodies and lively jigs. These were not mere songs, they were stories. Stories of love and loss, of battles fought, and of a homeland that refused to be forgotten. In the evenings, neighbors gathered by firelight to share tales passed down for generations. Legends of Fune, Mac Cumhale, of banshees that wailed in the night, and of heroes who rose against impossible odds. Even when bellies were empty, the heart of Ireland remained full of words and song. The Irish language, though suppressed, survived on the lips of elders teaching their grandchildren old Gaelic prayers and blessings. In faraway lands, these traditions crossed oceans, carried carefully by those who left woven into the fabric of cities like Boston, New York, and Sydney, and as generations grew, so too did pride. Irish festivals, parades, and dances celebrated a heritage born of both joy and struggle. Each step of a Sealy dance, each verse of an old ballad, came an act of remembrance, a quiet defiance against the forces that once tried to erase them. This resilience, this deep connection to culture, came Ireland's gift to the world, a reminder that even in the darkest winters, there can be a spring. Today, the story of the Irish potato famine remains a haunting chapter in history, a reminder of how quickly hunger can dismantle a nation. But it is also a story of resilience. The Irish who survived carried their culture, language, and music to every corner of the globe. From the bustling streets of Boston and New York to quiet communities in Canada and Australia, echoes of Ireland still linger. And in Ireland itself, famine memorials now stand where mass graves lie hidden beneath the earth. They whisper of a past that must never be forgotten. The famine taught hard lessons about power, poverty, and survival. But perhaps most of all, it showed the unbreakable spirit of a people who endured the unimaginable and found ways to rise again. So as you close your eyes tonight, remember, history isn't just dates and numbers. It's the quiet stories of those who came before us, their struggles, their sacrifices, and their strength. If you like this type of content, please like and subscribe at Mystridex.